Hello, I'm Daniel DeSantis, Head of Security Research at Forescout's Vedere Labs. Let's take a look back at Vedere Labs' predictions for 2022 and what actually came true this year. Our first prediction was that an increase in ransomware attacks would lead to increased regulation. And this is something that is happening as we speak. Right now in the US alone, there is regulation and legislation being drafted in more than 40 states and by several federal agencies. And that is something that is happening across the world as well, in many other countries in Europe and in other places. This legislation deals not only with cybersecurity training, awareness, and requirements for organizations to defend their networks, but a lot of it has to do with incident reporting as well. Cybersecurity has actually reached a tipping point after major attacks such as Colonial Pipeline, where this is now a matter of national security across the world, and it's a matter of boardroom discussions for organizations of every size. Our next prediction had to do with attackers returning to connected devices and leveraging IoT for their attacks. And this is something that also has become true, and we see it play out every day. We are seeing an increase in the number of ransomware, for instance, that leverages IoT devices, and other types of threat actors leveraging those devices as well to either gain a foothold into organizations or to cause an impact into the organizations that they have been targeting. We also predicted that greater IT-OT convergence would demand greater asset visibility for OT devices. In 2022, we saw many instances of attacks targeting OT networks, either starting from the IT network and then spreading to the OT side of the business, or directly attacking OT devices that are exposed to the internet. We saw, after a few years, the first new instances of OT ICS specific malware in Destroyer 2 winning controller. This malware was exploiting the typical insecure by design nature of OT devices, which demands asset visibility and demands network monitoring to be detected on the network. Our last prediction was that supply chain vulnerabilities would remain an important point of focus in 2022. That became true. Vedere Labs, for instance, has disclosed new vulnerabilities affecting supply chain components. We focused on IoT management platforms, and we released the Access 7 vulnerabilities at the beginning of this year that affected a multitude of vendors, but especially vendors in the healthcare domain. And Log4Shell, which was disclosed at the end of 2021, figured amongst the most exploited vulnerabilities in 2022. It was actually declared endemic by a new cyber safety review board in the United States. This type of vulnerability is basically here to stay for the foreseeable future. It's not something that can be easily patched in our organizations, and it's not something that will go away soon. Looking ahead to 2023, we predict that ransomware groups will expand into more types of IoT devices and continue to evolve their extortion campaigns. These ransomware groups will leverage IoT devices that have a weak security posture to gain initial access into organizations. They will also look into critical IoT devices that could cause an impact into organization to develop new extortion techniques. We could also see the rise of initial access brokers that focus on IoT devices. Our next prediction is that the hacking groups that have become active during the war in Ukraine will continue to remain active, actually regardless of what the outcome is. Many groups in the cybercriminal underground became politically motivated during this conflict. We believe that those groups will not just dismantle even after the war. In 2023, we also believe that state-sponsored actors will continue to increase their arsenal with new and sophisticated malware. This year, we saw state-sponsored actors targeted devices such as OT and ICS equipment, and we believe that in the next year they will expand into new types of devices, either for initial access into organization for espionage campaigns or to cause disruption for sabotage in case new cyber wars appear. Our next prediction has to do with connected medical devices and how their cybersecurity challenges will continue into 2023. This year, the FBI released an industry notification detailing vulnerabilities being exploited by threat actors on medical devices. This notification comes after a wave of ransomware attacks that have targeted healthcare organizations and have, in many cases, spilled over to medical devices. We believe that challenges with medical devices will continue into 2023, and we could actually see the first attacks that target those devices directly. Our final prediction for 2023 is that attacks on critical infrastructure will continue to increase. One of the interesting trends is that as ransomware gangs refrain from encrypting data, instead they exfiltrate this data and threaten to leak some of this data online to the public. Some of this data could be used by other groups to then carry out attacks into critical infrastructure organizations that have motives other than just financial gain.